Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a Monday edition of FPC Radio Live. It is December 26th, the day after Christmas. We're coming from you live from frigid Florida. That's right. I believe it was 32 degrees this morning when I woke up. And John, I have a picture. I took a picture of my front dash. And guess what? My tire pressure was 6 pounds lower than what it started with. How could that happen, John? I don't understand. It seems like there's some sort of scientific reason for loss of air pressure, right?
So you want to get back into Deflategate? What is this now? 8 years? 8 years ago.
Every winter. As long as there is a single person who references the Patriots and Brady cheating in 2016, I will continue every single time to mention this. And now that I live in this tropic state of Florida, I don't often get a chance to show off a massive drop in tire pressure. But no, it did drop down to 29 PSI, and it started at 35. So again, we know these things, John. The NFL, unfortunately, did not. So anyways, Merry Christmas.
You measured your PSI.
Well, it comes
on your tires. I like that.
Well, it shows up on my dash. Don't you know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't want to pretend like I'm out there like. I mean, 2015. Yeah, okay. I was doing stuff like that. Okay, or 2014, 2015. Not so much anymore. Unfortunately for me, I got a fancy little digital dash that tells me everything that I need to know. So, I have a picture though. I'm going to post it later. And just to
unlike Belichick though, do you know how to change the time on the clock? Because remember, he didn't know how to do that. Which he's old. He's old. I get it. Once you reach a certain age, you don't know.
I figured that out, but when I set the, I recently got my car service, so I had to change a battery, and I went to reset the date, and apparently I did it a day before. I think maybe what I did was set the time for AM and not PM, or PM and not AM.
Gotcha.
And basically it says it's December 25th today in my car. So it's Christmas.
Oh, Merry Christmas.
Yes,
Merry Christmas.
I know. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. What a great weekend of football. Look, today it was shaping up until the very end of last night's game. It was shaping up to be a devastating weekend for me personally. To put it bluntly, anyone, or to put it, to let you in on my, and I kind of do this from time to time, my fantasy football exploits. I didn't even need the playing of yesterday's games to know that I was losing this week. Let's just put it that way. My season, and on top of that, this is, if you're familiar with the show The League, it's about fantasy football on FX and all that stuff. I'm dead set in the Sacco Bowl, which is basically the last place game. Like, this is the game that determines who is the worst, who sucked the most in the game, and I'm in it. And it's just been a sad year of fantasy football, starting 0-6, and obviously just kind of floundering there at the end, and just really making me question why I play to begin with. But nonetheless, that would have been bad. The Patriots losing, and then last night looked like yet another disappointing Buccaneers showing, but they pulled it out with the skin of their teeth. Once again, another comeback win. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, why do they keep doing this to me? I'm ready to throw in the towel, okay? Like, of course, I'm never going to bail on Tom Brady, all right? I'm never going to not believe that he can't pull something out. I don't care what the season looks like, what the game looks like. This is another example of it, John. I mean, they pretty much sucked for 57 minutes. And then, well, I'm exaggerating a little bit. They had a little bit more time. But, 3 plus quarters, they were pretty bad again. But yet, when push comes to shove, when you need those scores, well, guess what? Tom Brady's usually going to come through. And that is also, that's off look, that middle possession where they had to punt with the game tied late. I don't know what they were thinking trying to run the ball on that. That was just a bad play call. There was some other bad sequencing of play calls in that game, including the 4 straight runs that just didn't work. But at the end of the day, you move to the hurry up offense, the up tempo. And again, it's not rushed to the line every single time. It's the no huddle. And they were talking about it on the broadcast earlier in the game. The Bucs were just getting torn up on the line. The Cardinals defensive line was just dominating the offensive line, and rightfully so. I mean, again, you're down to I think their third left tackle, and they have injuries across the line. They had another injury yesterday. And one of the interceptions that Tom threw was a product of, well, he was about to get absolutely leveled, so he had to rush the pass, and that's what happens. A defender makes a good play. How do you offset that, John? Well, you tire down the defensive line by keeping them off balance. You don't line up under center. You don't huddle up every single time and allow the defense to key in on what you're doing because, well, let's face it, this Buccaneers offense isn't creative. So they got to use mismatches to help in whatever way possible. And the best way to do that is to offset this pass rush and spread the defense out. Call a couple plays in the huddle, run them back to back to back, and don't give the defense time to adjust and switch personnel. And the only time, John, this Buccaneers offense, this Buccaneers team has looked a team that could actually do something in the playoffs is when they're utilizing that play style. And it's not shocking because, again, I mean, I'm not trying to take credit, but I and many other people have been just pounding the desk for this because we see this each and every week. This is when it works.
Yeah, I mean, without question. I mean, he's so good at it. And again, they'll have like a good quarter as they did. Well, the second half of the fourth quarter, their offense was clicking. They had a good half against Cincinnati last week. They can't quite put together 4 good quarters of football. They're able to pull out these wins. The alarming thing is it's against pretty bad teams, right? I mean, they were down 2 scores last night. They beat Arizona, of all teams, who's just not good at all. And they did it against New Orleans. They did it against the Rams. They're fortunate they're 7-8. They could very easily be, 4-11 and being in last place in that god awful division. But he's been able to pull out some wins from difficult situations. The thing is, the only danger of that is if you go into some hurry up type of offense. Again, it doesn't mean run up to the line of scrimmage, whatever. But if you go with 3 and out, now you've really put your defense in a hole because they have no time to catch their breath.
John, again, they were going 3 and out, not doing that. So what the hell's the difference?
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's true. Well, it's a time issue when I'm talking about those. Well, 3 and out with the no huddle, et cetera. But all of a sudden your defense is back out there.
You can run the no huddle and utilize every second of the play clock, and no one's better at doing that than Tom Brady.
Right.
It's not so much, and sometimes I have to catch myself because I don't mean hurry up as in, oh, it's a 2-minute drill. You got to get to the line. You got to play off and just kind of go, do that Chip Kelly Eagles offense from what was it, 2015, 16, whatever it was, where we're going to run the most play.
Now, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Yeah, but when I say, so sometimes I kind of misspoke, misspeak and say no huddle or hurry up. When in reality, it's a no huddle up tempo. And like I said, I mean, part of that be like they could, again, let the clock tick down and use 35 seconds off the 40-second play clock and still utilize this offense. It's more about not allowing the defense to switch out personnel and get a beat on what you're doing on offense because it really puts a lot on the shoulders of the quarterback. And there's a guy that plays for Tampa that I happen to trust, and these coaches should trust a lot more to get the job done. So yeah, to that sense, I don't necessarily mean it has to go fast. Like again, they can do these long, just long time-consuming drives and still utilize this type of offense. And then again, it opens up the running game because guys like Fournette and Rachaad White, hitting these gaps when these defensive linemen are tired and spread out a little bit. You know what I mean? When they're lining up to run the same exact dive play 3 times in a row, well, guess what? Your defense is going to cue in on that, and it's going to be very easy for them to stop. And we saw that in one sequence of plays for the Bucs at one point.
Yeah, it's nice to run off of 3 wide receiver sets when the defense thinks you're going to throw it, then you run it, and all of a sudden Fournette turns and gets ahead of steam and can pick up 7, 8, 9 yards, whatever it may be. It's been painful to watch. I mean, there's three teams that we kind of all zone in on, right? I mean, the Patriots, the Packers, and the Buccaneers. All three of those offenses are similar in one sense, is they're painful to watch. There's no rhythm. They're not good in the red zone. They end up kicking a ton of field goals, and you just leave a lot of points on the board, and it's frustrating.
And they always
it really
give
is.
you a little bit of a taste of how good they can be.
Right.
That's the worst part. Like every game, there's like a drive here, a quarter there, where you're like, wow, this is what it could look like. And then rinse and repeat.
Yeah. I saw that with the Packers yesterday. I mean, they're down 20-10. They get a late second quarter field goal, 2013, first drive of the second half. Beautiful drive. He's 4 for 4, and they run it in, and now it's a 20-20 game, and they end up winning because Tua throws 3 interceptions in the second half. But that drive looked really good. That looked like the way it should be for the Green Bay Packers, and we've seen it with Brady, and occasionally we see it with the Patriots. But like you said, Ian, for the most part, it's like 3 quarters of just really painful to watch, and occasionally a couple of good drives. And look, they're all 7 and 8, still in playoff contention somehow.
That's incredible, isn't it? They're all 7 and 8, and just I don't know. It's just such a. I mean, that's why the NFL is kind of great in this sense, where it's like
the league's bad this year.
It's bad. I mean, it's bad.
Yeah,
it's bad.
It is.
So you said earlier, something about mediocre. Now I kind of forgot what you said, but basically, I was going to point out and say there's not really that many elite teams in the league, anyways. Oh yeah, you're talking about who the Buccaneers have beaten. Well, quite frankly, there's not a lot of good teams in the league, so I think a lot of teams have this type of schedule when you look at it. But you look at both Rodgers and Brady have missed more throws this season than we're used to. I mean, that's a fact. That's fine. It doesn't mean I mean, these guys we are held to such a high standard. So when they miss a throw, it's the end of the world or whatever. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe I've never seen that before. But at the end of the day, I think, to your point, very similar circumstances, but different at the same time. Like, we know a lot of the Packers' problems. I think, come back to letting Davante Adams go and not having that kind of game breaker on offense to kind of keep them above. I mean, the defense has been subpar. You can say the same thing about the Buccaneers. Defense at times has looked really good, but then at other times they pick the worst time to make a mistake. And I think both quarterbacks aren't healthy. Like, I know I'm not using it as an excuse. I'm not saying, oh, this is 100% why. But look, I think both guys are dealing with a lot of things. And at both of their ages, it obviously takes a little bit longer for them to kind of heal up and whatever. But inconsistencies on offense for both of them. Drops, I think they're both this year, and then this is one of the big differences from a year ago, where the Packers were near the bottom of the league in terms of total drops. The last I checked, I mean, this was a couple weeks ago. Last I checked, they were, I think, in the top 10 in drops this season, which is a huge difference from last year. The Buccaneers are right there at the top, just like they were last season and the year before. So that's no different. Just the problem is lack of big plays to complement that. And that's why you're seeing these teams, the Packers and the Buccaneers, just scrape by. And we're sitting here waiting for it. And it's like, wait a minute, there's only 2 games left. Like, how long are we going to wait? Like, I mean, I guess, again, especially for the Buccaneers, who obviously have a better shot at making the playoffs because of, being in front of the division. All it really needs to happen is for it to arrive, beginning of January, or at least next week, win the division, and then hope that it comes, in the middle of January, and you're fine. You can go on a run. But, I mean, at this point, are we just holding out hope for nothing? Because it's like, I feel like at least at this point, they would have both figured it out by now. But then again, to your point, there's a lot of bad football here. And, we look at the Packers and the Buccaneers struggles, and we think, wow, these could possibly be 2 of the worst teams in the world, in the league. But at the end of the day, John, it kind of seems like they're in a better spot than Miami, both of them. As crazy as that sounds, because Miami has just fallen off the map. 4 straight losses. And I think that you mentioned Tua's 3 interceptions. They came on 3 consecutive drives late in the game. That's bad. And I think you're seeing a huge drop off from the beginning of the season, something I didn't necessarily expect.
Yeah, I mean, with Tua, he in the first half was outstanding. He was averaging 25 yards per completion. I mean, I'm sure Al Davis somewhere was smiling from up above, with the bombs away offense. Again, when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, you can do that. Those two guys are superb. But yeah, in the second half, I believe he was 4 of 16 with 3 interceptions. That is horrible. That sounds like a guy that should be benched. But of course, he's had a good year, but the last month has been up and down for Tua. At least with Tampa and Green Bay, they have quarterbacks that have been there, done that, right? Obviously, Brady at the highest level ever. And Rodgers, for some of his failures, still generally makes the playoffs and wins some playoff games. So those two teams can go into their games feeling that even if those guys aren't great in the first half, the second half, they'll bounce back and find a way to win. Yeah. I think both quarterbacks are dealing with something, as far as Brady, you talked about the labrum. I'm sure that's an issue. And again, he's 45 years old. I know he takes great care of himself, but when you're 45, it takes longer to heal. Same thing with Rodgers. He takes care of himself. He's 39. We know he has the thumb and the ribs. I think it's obviously impacted the way they're throwing the football. Conversely, Josh Allen, who's 27, had the elbow about a month and a half ago, and he looks just fine. I mean, he's, a decade, nearly 2 decades younger than those guys, so he bounces back. That's the case with both quarterbacks. And also, I mean, I saw a pass yesterday that Rodgers threw a perfect strike to Allen Lazard.
Was that the
Lazard dropped?
The roll? No, not the rollout one. But that was beautiful, by the way. The one.
It was a beautifully designed play. Yeah. It was gorgeous. It was. I mean, I could have caught it. I think. Yeah. But he dropped it, and it just after that he kind of gets a little bit off the rail. Sometimes he doesn't deal with that as well as he should. That's what Brady does better than anybody. Someone drops the ball, he just kind of forgets it and then moves on to the next play.
Well,
Rodgers kind of stews about it.
He has a lot of drops the last couple of years.
True, yeah,
he's
exactly.
But that's kind of the thing too. And there's a lot of obviously, Brady's always going to be the lightning rod of criticism and praise, no matter what. And that just kind of comes with the territory. So obviously, when the Bucs struggle, it's on Brady. But it's like you look at across the league, it's like how many touchdowns have been taken off the board for offensive line penalties for the Buccaneers?
Oh,
I feel like you get one at least once a week.
It feels that way, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it's like, you start to think about it and you think across, 15 games or so. Well, that adds up. All of a sudden, a 22, and I think he's at 9 interceptions now, turns into say 27, 28, and 9, and what what I mean? Like we're talking about, and this is why it's kind of silly to look at the raw numbers, because this is exactly what people did in 2019. And I mean, all I got to do is roll the tape from me talking for endlessly about, don't sleep on this guy. It's not a physical decline. It's more or less the situation. And that's not trying to pass off blame. People mistaking that as saying, oh, Tom Brady can do no wrong. No, that's not what I said. It's like that meme people post on Twitter now of that person. It's basically, it's happens on social media all the time. You'll say one thing and then someone will it's like, I like pancakes, and then someone come back, what, you hate French toast? No,
right.
No, you know what I mean? That's not what I said. But that's how people argue on Twitter, and we get it all the time. So, to me, I'm looking at it and I say, I think physically both quarterbacks are banged up. So I do think physically there is part of the issue. But I think for both situations, it's more or less the situation around them. And I just know a little bit ago asked, wouldn't you say Rodgers is part of the reason with the cap number and everything like that? And I mean, look, that certainly plays a factor. But I'll tell you what, John, I was never a big fan of Matt LaFleur. But I think he's gotten, if anyone's gotten exposed, I think it's him. I don't think he's a great in-game coach at all. And I think you've talked about this for a while. We've both kind of talked about this. But what are you going to say when you go 13-3, 3 straight seasons? But I think at the end of the day, it's very clear that his success obviously is rooted more so in Aaron Rodgers than him being a coaching savant, because he makes some really piss poor decisions in game and mismanages a lot of situations.
Yeah, fake punt down a touchdown.
Yeah,
inside your own 25. I mean, that's kind of risky play. Even if you make it, okay, it's 1st and 10 from your 28. Okay, that sounds great. You have no faith in your defense if you're doing something like that. And early in the game, the defense was a sieve. Got buttoned up in the second half, and Tua kind of helped along the way with the 3 interceptions. Yeah, I mean, the play calling sometimes is tough. I've never seen a team run to the short side of the field more than the Packers, right? And that becomes frustrating because that can get blown up pretty quickly. It's a lot easier for the defense to defend the shorter side of the field. And here's, Aaron Jones taking a pitch, and before it's in his hands, it feels like there's 2 defenders within 3 yards of him, and the play's blown up. So, we see that quite a bit. Just with both quarterbacks, I think they're still really good. I also think, especially with young wide receivers, or maybe even older wide receivers, it must be intimidating to play with those guys. As great as they are, especially Brady. I mean, he's 45 years old. This guy's playing there who, were barely born when he won his first Super Bowl. In some senses, it's great to play with those guys. They're the 2, obviously the greatest ever and one of the top 5 of the Super Bowl era. But it's got to be intimidating, right? Well, because it's Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if you play with Josh Allen, he's a contemporary. If Patrick Mahomes is a contemporary, it's like, hey guys, okay, my mistake. Sorry, they're not gonna belittle their teammates. Or just with Rodgers, it's more about the looks.
Yeah,
because he's so passive aggressive, right? And Brady, we see get animated on the sideline.
There's more of an urgency too. Like like obviously, like when you're looking at like again, this isn't like we're not talking about these guys having like hero worship or anything like that. Although, I mean, look, when you're like, we saw it a couple of weeks ago when you're a defender and you come up and be like, hey man, I don't normally do this, but I just picked you off. Can you sign this football? That doesn't happen with every single player. And to your point, certainly not your contemporary, someone that's either your age or close to it. But I do think there's added urgency, especially in, you look at the Bucs situation, and I think everyone sees obviously the writing on the wall in terms of at the very least Brady's time in Tampa. I'm still fairly certain he's going to end up playing next season. I just don't think it's going to be in Tampa Bay. I think we're seeing several options start to really open up. Something that wasn't necessarily there a couple weeks ago, and that's something we can talk about maybe like tomorrow or later in the week. But yeah, there's urgency. So when you make a mistake, all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, well, we gotta make up for it. We gotta do this. We gotta do that. And you look at this Tampa team, and like they got really old overnight. And I'm not talking about Brady. I'm talking about obviously Julio Jones is he shows flashes. I don't sometimes I don't even notice him on the field. Other times it's like, wow, I wish we had we saw him do a little bit more in the field. Chris Godwin is clearly not back to his pre-injury form, which is understandable. I mean, the guy suffered the injury in week 15 last year. We're talking about barely a calendar year since that injury. But that doesn't help the current situation. So all of a sudden you have what I believe to be a banged up Mike Evans, a Chris Godwin who is trying to recapture what he once was. But as we know, with injuries, that's not your choice. Sometimes you just got to handle whatever your body can handle. And right now, I think Chris Godwin's not at 100%. Not that he's re-injured, just, that's just part of the recovery. And then you have Julio Jones and guys like Russell Gage and, Cade Otton's a nice player, but like we saw in that seam route that him and Brady missed on. I mean, I know people are quick to jump on Brady on that one, but that's an example of Cade Otton just being a young player, because you gotta play that a little bit more to the middle. Like he went a little bit too straight up on that seam. You know which play I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. The defender kind of stayed inside on him, and I think it was bad and knocked away and maybe almost intercepted. But I'm sitting here thinking like, man, because they reference Gronkowski running that route all the time. I'm like, yeah, he ran that route, but he angled it a little bit more to the center of the field. And that's what Brady's expecting. So these like little things that just aren't clicking right now are the biggest issue. And it's not, it's not this overwhelmingly poor play from Brady or in the case of the Packers, Rodgers. It's just they haven't played at their highest level, but I still believe that they're probably the least of the issues and certainly not the root cause of the issues for both teams.
Yeah, I mean, both teams are 7-8. but then you look at a team like Minnesota, which is 12-3 and is 10-0 in one-score games this year. So there's probably not a huge difference between Tampa and Green Bay, what they've done this year, and Minnesota. It's just, a bounce here or there, a play that you make, a special teams play. I know in the Minnesota Patriots game, they had a kickoff return for a touchdown, which essentially was the difference in that game. So that's how close these teams are in the NFL. Look at even the teams that we consider elite. I mean, Cincinnati had a great first half against the Patriots, went to sleep in the second half. Patriots nearly pulled off a miraculous comeback. Kansas City's kind of slogged their way through the last month and a half, right? They're scoring 24, 27, whatever. Buffalo sometimes takes a little while to get going. You look at a team at the bottom, the worst team in football, the Houston Texans. I mean, they're going into overtime against Kansas City. They needed to beat Dallas a few weeks ago. And, oh, by the way, they beat Tennessee to knock them out of first place. So that's what the league is right now. The worst teams playing the best teams. The games are competitive. And I think also because it seems like it's more of a defensive league this year than it has been in many, many years. Just look at the amount of interceptions. I mean, the great quarterbacks have thrown a lot of interceptions. Rodgers has 11 interceptions. He hasn't thrown double-digit interceptions since 2010. Mahomes is up to double digits. A lot of quarterbacks are throwing picks. I mean, Dak Prescott seems to throw a pick or two every game.
I mean, Joe Burrow. I mean, I know he's played really well, but I mean, he's
in double digits. Yeah. Pick six, which turned the game around. And again, that's an elite team and elite quarterback. So it's just not. There's no team out there that we could pick right now that says they're just going to blitz through the playoffs, win the Super Bowl, and be crowned, like, say, the 04 Patriots or, a team, obviously, like the 89 49ers or the early 90s Cowboys. There's no one, anyone that good.
The Eagles with Jalen Hurts are as close as you're going to get. Yeah. Yep. Look, we saw it against the Cowboys. They were obviously very competitive and you look at Gardner Minshew, and that's the thing. I know Chiefs fans were, before the Eagles ultimately lost, were kind of taking a victory lap and seeing Jalen Hurts I hate when people do this. They'll be like, "Oh, look at what they did without Jalen Hurts." I mean, that doesn't negate what he's done this entire season, and it's certainly not a knock on his MVP candidacy, because I didn't see any of them come out after the game was lost and say, "You know what? Jalen Hurts still has a really good case because they lost." You know what I mean? It's just that doesn't happen. It was more or less like, "Oh, Gardner Minshew's we all know is a very serviceable," and that's might be an insult to call him just serviceable, but he's a very good backup quarterback, very capable. So the fact that the Eagles were still able to produce wasn't surprising. But I don't think it's a coincidence that they lose that game, doubling their loss total in just his one start versus the 13 that you got from Jalen Hurts when you only have one loss. So, but what I'm kind of laughing at, John, is Patrick, and this is what's crazy about it. Patrick Mahomes is going to end up with almost the identical stat line of what Tom Brady was last year. Like in touchdown, like total touchdowns and yards and everything like that. And if you talk to some people, it's almost insulting to even mention anyone else in the MVP race alongside Mahomes. It's almost like, you know what I mean? So I find that kind of funny, but at the same time, I'm because I'm still bitter about that. Look, we've talked about it at plenty. I 100% think Aaron Rodgers was the 2020 MVP, and I've recently had to push back against Mahomes fans trying to change what history was. It's like, no, Aaron Rodgers was the MVP very clearly in 2020. Last year, I think it very clearly should have been Tom Brady, and I think more and more now that obviously that race is long behind us, I think more and more people are like, yeah, it's kind of weird that Aaron Rodgers, at the end of the day, no one's going to, history's not going to sit back 20 years from now and say, like, well, Aaron Rodgers' fourth MVP, that's going to, he's just an MVP. That's what it is. But this year, I'm sitting here just laughing because it's like, Mahomes, again, is probably going to end up roughly right around the same statistical numbers as what Brady was last year. And again, like I said, some people are treating it like you insulted their children by suggesting that anyone else should be in the race with Patrick Mahomes. Yeah,
I mean, and there's other candidates too this year, but I think Hurts is still the front runner. And again, Minshew is a dynamite backup quarterback. Heck, right now he played better on Saturday than certainly Russell Wilson has played all season, or Deshaun Watson has played all season. I mean, how do the Cleveland Browns and Denver Broncos feel about their two quarterbacks? They gave up a ton to get them, signed them to these humongous contracts. They're stuck with them, and both guys look washed. Yeah. Right? I mean, it really is frightening for those two teams.
At the very least, if you're Cleveland, and we talked about this a little bit, and I'm certainly not rooting for the guy, but playing, having almost 2 years off of football, I think there's going to come with a lot of rust. So at least there's a chance that Deshaun Watson is going to be able to turn it around, and Cleveland will rest a little bit easier at night. Denver is, that's I don't think I've ever. I don't know if this is. I don't think this is too dramatic, but when's the last time we've seen just an absolute drop off? And like, look, I you know me, I'm never been the biggest Russell Wilson fan. Doesn't mean I don't think he wasn't a really good quarterback, because, well, you can't deny everything. That just makes you delusional. But even from where I believe he was as a quarterback, this drop off has just been unimaginable. And I know people would be like, well, Peyton, man, well, there's reasons for that. Well, first of all, Peyton was 39 in his last season, and he was also coming off, obviously, those massive neck injuries that just, again, was a huge reason, or coupled with his age, that caused his dramatic drop off. But this has just been, I don't know, John. Can you think of any player in recent memory that has just gone from borderline MVP candidate to just perhaps the worst quarterback in the league?
Yeah, like 4 years ago, he was second team All-Pro, right? And then 2 years ago, he was a serious MVP candidate. Last year, he got off to a decent start. Then he got hurt, came back, struggled for a while. But then at the end, he started to look like Russell Wilson. That's why Denver said, absolutely, we'll jump in and trade for him. And then this year, he has 12 touchdown passes, which, by the way, matches how many bathrooms he has in his mansion. So that's a good thing. But yeah, I can't think of anybody, Ian. Maybe in hockey or something, but usually it's injury related. Like, do you just lose it overnight the way Russell Wilson has lost it? I mean, that game was 17-0, not even midway through the first quarter, against the Rams of all teams who can't get out of their own way. And Baker Mayfield looked like a stud quarterback yesterday, and Russell Wilson got benched. I mean, that's how bad he was. So yeah, I can't think of anybody that's gone from top 5, top 6 quarterback to right now playing the position as poorly as it can be played.
Yeah, and look, I don't think either of us believe that Nathaniel Hackett is cut out for being a head coach. Certainly not with this team.
No.
So that's not helping. He might have these like lingering injuries that might be a problem, but it's alarming because you look Seattle. I think Russell Wilson at his peak is obviously a better quarterback than Geno Smith, but I think you're seeing in Seattle with what they've been able to do and replicate with Geno Smith as opposed to not having Russell Wilson. And you're like, all these years we're talking about let Russ cook, and Pete Carroll kind of knew, like, well, maybe not. And look, like I said, I mean, I was never the biggest fan of his. I don't think, people talk about, I saw someone say yesterday, he was a Hall of Famer with the Seahawks. And I was like, I don't know. No, I've been saying for a while. I don't think he was a Hall of Fame quarterback before he went to the Broncos. And this certainly doesn't help his case, because I looked at it as like, okay, not getting a single MVP vote. And I know that's not the entire thing, but I mean, certainly when it comes to Hall of Fame, what's important is MVPs, All Pros, and Super Bowls. Well, he has a Super Bowl. Again, I don't know. It's tough because, like, again, the Super Bowl is there, but no MVP votes. I've never considered. He's never been considered the best quarterback in the league, or even one of the top 3. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, at one point in his career, do you think he was the highest ranked? What was the highest ranking in any season? Do you think legitimately you would put him at as quarterback? 4, 5? And I think that's
right generous. Around there. Yeah, I mean, there was one year where he was second team All-Pro. Was it 2018 or 2019? He threw for 40 touchdown passes. He was really good. It might have been 19 because Brady and Rodgers didn't have great statistical years.
Exactly, and it's like neither of us, no one's going to sit there and say that, despite obviously the statistical output, no one's sitting there saying Russell Wilson was a better quarterback, except for Sam Hawkbadger or whatever that account is on Twitter. Anyone who, some people know who I'm talking about. He's still probably saying that he's the best. Actually, I should probably check in on him. He might not be doing too well after the season, but that's a great example because, like, statistically, you would, top whatever among quarterbacks, but no one in their right mind is sitting there saying that he was a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. You know what I mean? So, like, even then, at his absolute peak, 5th best quarterback in the league, if that. So, to me, I wasn't high on him to begin with, but it's still a surprising cliff fall. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to bring up cliffs, but if anything epitomizes the falling off a cliff, it's Russell Wilson right now.
He certainly has. I mean, there's no gradual descent. I mean, this thing is like really good quarterback last year when he got healthy to the point now where he is horrible, right? Yeah. And getting pulled, and they actually played better when he didn't play last week. They actually beat Arizona fairly handily, right? It was like one of their better offensive performances of the year with him out with the concussion. He comes back this week and he's throwing 2 interceptions early in the game and was over quickly. So, yeah, it is just maddening, and they're stuck with him. There's nothing they can do. I mean, they've got a ton of money behind them. Their new owners paid, I believe, close to $5 billion for the Broncos. They're worth 30, 40, 50 billion dollars. They can do whatever they want, but there's no way around getting out of that contract. You can't just have a big check and say, please go away, because it's going to destroy your cap anyway. Yeah. What do you do? And they had no success drafting quarterbacks. The only time they've had them, obviously, when they traded for John Elway. They didn't technically draft him. They traded for him, and then they signed Peyton Manning, and Jake Plummer was pretty good for a little bit too. But, yeah, for the most part, they drafted poorly at the quarterback position, and they go out and trade for this guy, assuming that they're going to be a contending team, and he has been far worse than anyone could have ever expected.
Yeah, and like that's the thing too. Even in like my wildest, most hater-filled dreams, I could have never imagined this type of just drop off. So, did you know, John, that Patrick Mahomes invented diving towards the end zone this weekend? I
wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. Huh. I had never seen a player dive towards the pylon ever, running towards the sideline. Certainly not a quarterback. Oh my God.
Let me think. I think I remember John Elway in a Super Bowl doing that.
And this is the thing. This is where it kills me, because it's like, yeah, it's a great play. I want to sit here and say, oh, wow, what a great, I'm talking about Patrick Mahomes' touchdown run. And some people were asking me, like, why did the ball? Look, the rules are, like, consider the pylon an extension of the goal line. So you don't need to get inside the pylon. If the ball grazes across the top of any goal, it's going to be a touchdown. So it was a touchdown. It was a great play. I mean, no doubt about it. But again, the reaction to what we see, and we have seen from many other quarterbacks and other players, is just, it's over the top again. And this is what kills me about it, is that, we'll sit there and pretend like the guy invents, diving towards the end zone. And it's like, it's a great play. Just treat it as that. Don't give me this over the top hyperbole duration to pander to, this era of fan. I don't even know what it is, John. I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle here, because there's nothing I can do to change how people react and what they value in their it's a highlight reel generation. So highlights are more valuable than great play, sadly.
Maybe they just started watching a few years ago, because I do remember, I'll reference another Super Bowl. Brett Favre did it against the Patriots.
Look,
26 years ago. One of his touchdown runs was that.
There's so many comparisons between Patrick Mahomes and Brett Favre that are just, I mean, very similar type of player. I think Patrick Mahomes is a smarter player than Brett Favre, and certainly off the field. I mean, I don't think there's any comparison about who's the better person, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about on the field, and the two play very similarly. and you talk about, you know, the running around and you know, making something out of that. That's what Brett Favre was. And yeah, he turned the ball over a lot, but you know what? Patrick Mahomes isn't the best protector of the football either. And even when he had a lower interception number a couple years ago, that was when he had like a large number of turnover worthy plays, you know, plays that could turn into interceptions or maybe should have been interceptions. So, you know, he's not certainly the most protective of the football either. So when we make these comparisons, it's not an insult. It's just more reality. But unfortunately, like I said, we live in an era right now where it's TikTok, it's quick highlights on Twitter, it's GIFs, it's memes, it's, you know, he is him and all that junk, where it's like we value these things that are surface. You know what I mean? It's more, okay, you know, we're gonna get the cheap laugh and then not worry so much about the substance of it, and that's what I think we're getting. Although, again, like I said, at the end of the day, I believe Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback. I thought it was a great play yesterday. It's just it's taking a lot of energy out of me, John, to listen to this is the greatest thing, this or this, that. Oh my God, he's reinventing the quarterback position. I'm like, save me that, please.
You sound like a cranky old man.
I am, John. You know what? It's cold out. My joints hurt. My back hurts. And you know what? It's painful staying up until 11:30, 12 o'clock watching that Bucs game last night. So you know what? I am a cranky old man right now. That's fine. That's fine.
You have your oatmeal yet?
No, I did have a banana though.
Okay.
I mashed it up.
Okay. That's important.
No, I went to the gym. I was good. I was good. I walked around with like those very light weights and just kind of power walked like an old man.
Yeah, do like a stanza when he went to the gym and
yeah, exactly. But no, like I said, it'll be. I'm excited for the playoffs at least. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to expect at this point. So all I know is we're gonna have to say goodbye right now because I don't want to go off on any other rant. We don't really have enough time. We will be back tomorrow though, and we'll kind of put a bow on the rest of this week and kind of look forward to the last couple of weeks where, thank God, a win is all the Buccaneers need to win the division, and we can breathe a little bit easier knowing that Tom Brady will be in the playoffs. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will talk to you tomorrow.